Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the Jupiter market. So much FUD on the timeline about Jupiter. Do you know why? Do you know what's going on? We are going to get into all of it and give our takes. Would also like to hear your takes in just a little bit. And we do have some takes for sure on this one. Just a reminder, friends, before we get into it, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This modern market is exceptionally risky. We do not know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. I'm your host, B-Check. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary. We've got Sammy back with us up on stage. You've got Funky too. We've got T-Ro. We're going to get into all of this and more in just a moment. But first, Legendary, this Thursday, the 1st of February, it's a new month. How are you feeling?
GM, quite insane. That were only the first 31 days in 2024, and so much has happened. That's ridiculous at this pace. I'm not going to make it. Not going to make it to the end of the year. But apart from that, I'm doing fine.
How much money have? That's the universe telling me that I can't ask you live how much money you made in January from airdrops.
Yeah, we should take that sign and move on to the next question. Yeah.
Okay. Don't ask people directly on a live show how much money they made. The universe does not want that to happen. I'm going to stop being able to breathe and coughing. Really crazy January, to be honest. Like, yeah, as you say, so much has happened, all kinds of stuff. Any kind of reflections on where we are? There was someone in our chat, Legendary. I don't know if you saw. Actually, it wasn't in the chat. It was someone who messaged me who is in one of our group chats. Message to just kind of say, like, do you know what? I'm just a little bit overwhelmed at the moment. Thinking of like how to address this overwhelmed feeling. There seems to be so much going on, and I kind of messaged back to say, do you remember how we started in January where we were so stressed and so overwhelmed that we were basically trying to have a discussion like, should we be projecting a more attitude of calm because we maybe have a responsibility now that our audience is slightly bigger? Like, should we be as stressed out? How have you kind of adjusted from the start of the month where we were like, oh my God, so much going on, how are we going to cope with all of this, to now a little bit later? What have you been doing? What are the changes that you have made that could be helpful to people listening?
Oh, I love the question. I also remember the discussion when we talked about whether we should project that aura of calmness or not, and I was heavily leaning against that sentiment.
Correct.
But more on the side of having to instill a sense of urgency into people, because the time windows of, or the opportunistic time windows like these typically don't tend to be the longest ones, and it definitely makes sense to compromise and sacrifice other things, at least in my opinion, during those periods, and make the most out of it. I think we are in a phase where we are seeing loads of things happening at the same time, namely the gaming market being overheated. We are seeing the first signs of FUD around some of those free mints. We are still seeing a layer 2 or alternative layer 1 craze with so many blockchains trying to garner attention in that perpetual game and fight for TVL. We are seeing still a very, very strong narrative around liquid staking, liquid restaking. We have, I think, EtherFi again in the news today, continuing their vampire attacking strategy, which I find quite smart. Maybe we find 1 or 2 minutes to dive into that a bit as well. So I do think it is unfortunately a stage in the market where we see some areas overheating and some other areas still like gathering loads and lots of interest. And in those phases, while I typically think it makes sense to have concentrated bets, I think this is one of the stages where personally I do want to be diversified across multiple segments, which to me are, again, those infrastructure projects, where that's L2 solutions, where that's also gaming infrastructure, but also on the gaming side of things, but also having exposure to what's going on Solana, on the deck side of things with airdrops. And I think like for me, those are the 3-4 things that I'm focusing on. I'm very much aware there are many other lucrative areas to tap into, such as ordinals. But I have to limit myself to be like, I can't seize all opportunities, but realistically, I can seize more or capture more than one segment.
I like it. I like that a lot. Some practical thoughts on how to structure your thinking, or how Legendary has structured his thinking, and how you might want to consider how you want to structure yours. And for the people who have a pen and paper handy, and I know that there are people who take notes on our show, and I know that because they've messaged me to say that. Why don't I just give some things that we've been looking at? So because the thing that you just said there, which the only thing that I think was confusing, you mentioned gaming. We're aware of the various NFT projects they've launched on ETH in terms of gaming. You mentioned Solana. We're aware of the NFT things on Solana. However, when you say infrastructure, I think that's one of the things that's like, well, what does that specifically mean? So here are some of the things that we are looking at. This is from a list in one of our chats that we've compiled. Number one, we've got bridges. You've got all kinds of bridges. Orbiter is one of our favorite bridges. We've been using Orbiter for years, I think now. Really, really good. They're good. They're going to be doing a token. They're doing a what's it called? A points program at the moment. Of course, they're doing a points program. So is everyone. We've got Bungee Jumper. Bungee and Jumper also bridges, and that uses layer 0 as well, which is also expected to do an airdrop. You've got exchanges like Odo, Slingshot, which are still tokenless as things stand. You can provide liquidity on Ikubo on Starknet. You can, and then you mentioned EtherFi for the restaking narrative. You've obviously got Eigenlayer itself, where you can restake ETH. You can also go into Eigenlayer via these other protocols, and those protocols themselves are likely to do airdrops. So you've got EtherFi and Kelp. There are some other ones as well. These are just some on our horizon. Solana, to get ETH over to Solana, or to get money over to Solana, you've got Mayan Finance, which is powered by Wormhole. Like, very, very important way to get your money across, rather than just using a centralized exchange and getting it across. You've got all kinds of exchanges where you can, where you can maybe use leverage or not. You've got Jupiter, Phantom, Backpack, Drift, Zeta on Solana. You've got MarginFi, Parcel, Camino, where you can provide liquidity on Solana. So all kinds of stuff going on. Legendary, any final thoughts on my kind of big question of like, what do you mean by infrastructure?
Yes, this is what I definitely mean by infrastructure. I think what I would add to that is on the gaming side of things, some of the node programs that are going on, but also things like infrastructure for gaming tournaments, white label solution for monetization for esports compatible teams or esports compatible games, something that I think Xborg is doing. So it's also things like that on top of it. I think one other trend that is definitely here to stay, or two more trends maybe. One of which is lending and the perps market, NFT lending, perps market. You obviously doing your work with Gondi, and the other thing is real world asset tokenization, which is something that I find super relevant, but I don't really have a lot of exposure to it. Probably the only thing that I'm doing right now is Parcel on Solana, which is tokenized real estate. And they also currently have a loyalty points campaign going on in preparation to the airdrop. And this is one of my more heavily farmed things on Solana, to put it like that.
Two things on that. One, I'm working on something where hopefully we'll be able to get some RWA exposure. Two, what was number two? Number two, lending and perps. This is one of the things I posted in our chat the other day, is that I think, I see Funky with your hand raised. We're going to get into all the headlines in just a moment, but I think sometimes these conversations are helpful. I think that lending and perps are going to become very prominent in the market. And I think that for a long period of time, NFT traders have been able to just go off JPEGs, just go off the vibe, just go off community, just go off, feel, I like this piece of art, I like that person who bought it on the timeline, I'm just going to buy and sell like that. Now, I think that will still be able to continue, and I think those are still good metrics to be able to trade those JPEGs. However, one thing I've learned after being pretty involved in the NFT lending market is that the lending market shows you things. Like when you look at the chart, I'm not saying it completely predicts the future perfectly, but it really does offer you some insight, which is helpful. It's clearly helpful to know the health of the lending market behind the NFT project. And in the exact same way, so if you are an NFT trader and you just want to see JPEG, buy JPEG, sell JPEG, like I think you can probably do that, but just know that there's all kinds of additional metrics now as the asset becomes more financialized, that if you're not using that information, someone else is going to be using it to get better insight. And so that person might be me when it comes to NFT lending. But I think the perps market is going to, with what Wasabi is doing and with what Flooring Protocol are doing, when they've fractionalized all these NFTs, allowing people to long and short them, like knowing the position of long and shorts is going to be pretty important. It's going to be pretty useful information, right? And so what I've noticed is that the NFT market is potentially about to get a lot more complicated. I need to do a lot more reading on it. I want to do more research on it. That's why I put in our chat earlier that I want to get a group of people together, want to do some reading, want to kind of do some group research, discuss, make sure we understand it properly, because I think it's about to get much more complicated. And I don't want to trade blind. I don't want to be blind. Like I think people who don't have that knowledge will be trading blind. And maybe in this space that's okay, because 60% of the time doing the dumbest thing possible is actually better, and maybe not having that information is good, but I always want to equip myself with the information. Legendary, any thoughts on that? I want to throw to Funky, who's got his hand raised.
Absolutely have a thought on that, because I think it's such a valuable take and a valuable addition. Because if you trade NFTs, at least this is how I am viewing it these days, there's two time horizons that you want to look at. Like, especially if you're getting into a new project, you obviously have the short-term things that are happening around the mint, the hype, the marketing, everything that goes on with that. And I think this very much still resembles like the old days of 2021, 2022, in terms of how you traded with timeline sentiment, community sentiment, etc. But if you are to hold something for the long term, then obviously, all the stuff, team execution, yada, 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 that still matters, that we all know. But the new thing is exactly what you said, is having a look at the lending market, having a look what's going on with pudgy penguins. If you have 0% loans on them, it's obviously going to be a very positive sign. If those loans disappear, that might have a short-term impact on the price, as we've seen last week. So in the long run, if you are invested in an NFT or in a JPEG collection of whatever sorts, that also has exposure to lending markets, you do have to watch them on top of tracking what the project or what the team is doing.
Exactly. So I think it's moving into that more complicated direction. Funky, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts here?
GM, everyone. A couple quick things. First and foremost, congratulations on finally hitting 1,000 followers on the Modern Market account. Well deserved, and I just want to say that. Two, a lot of the things that you touched on, I've already given Sammy a shout out before. He has that great thread that covers a lot of those airdrops. He put that out around New Year's Eve or so last year, and you can check that out. Not financial advice, of course. And then I think this also circles back to the bigger conversation we had a couple weeks ago about just open interest and what you guys are discussing, just having that additional information with regard to NFT platforms and lending, and looking at, are people long, short, everything else. And I think for those of you who are really paying attention to that data, it gives you a lot of signal about what's about to happen and so on and so forth. So I think I completely concur with everything you guys just said in terms of how this is going to augment the NFT game in a lot of ways. So I just want to chime in with those few things real quick.
Firstly, thank you very much, Funky. Appreciate it. We've gone from 0 to 1,000 followers in 2 months. So very, very happy with that. And thank you all so much for supporting us on that journey. Really, really appreciate it. Number two, exactly that. So for example, I think it might have been Eddie who shared yesterday that 90% of open interest is like short DGODs, for example, right now. And look, I'm not saying I'm not sophisticated enough at the moment to know what to do with that information, but I know it means something, because I haven't been an advanced trader like that. So I need to go away and do my research to figure out, like, how do I use that information properly, and what are the consequences? Because there will be consequences for knowing that like 100% of people are long pudgy penguins as they're on the rise up. It's just like, how do we figure that out? I'm sure some people already have some thoughts on that and already know the answers, but that's my thinking as things stand. Sammy, we want to get into the headlines in just a second, but just wanted to say welcome back. How are you doing? What are your thoughts on what we're talking about? You are out of practice. You are on mute, my friend.
Sorry, a bit jet lagged still, so yeah, getting there. But yeah, good to be back. Actually, like in one place for a longer period of time, which is nice. But I think, to be honest, Funky mentioned a lot of things that I wanted to say in terms of open interest. Because when you look at the equities market, you have sort of derivative contracts, so futures, options, various things like that dictate the general overall market sentiment. And I think as the NFT market matures, and you have not just PFPs but other sort of NFT assets that are used on these protocols, it'll probably become a lot more mature, and you'll see a lot more derivatives that kind of enter the market. And I think Sam mentioned, so Punk 9059 mentioned about Tensor and the option contracts and stuff that are going on over there.
Yes.
So that's super interesting, and similar to you, like I want to kind of start delving into that to start properly understanding, because I have a lot of perp protocols contacting me, and there seems to be a lot more that are coming into the space. So yeah, certainly a changing dynamic environment, and it's exciting to see where that goes.
Yeah, me too, actually, and that's part of the reason why we need to get on top of it. We'll talk about that offline for sure. Very, very important movements. Let's get into it. Let's get into the headlines. Then we're going to get into this main headline about Jupiter and get down into the weeds. What the hell is going on with this FUD? And Legendary has a straightforward answer for you. No question. Right, let's get into the snapshot. This is, as always, pinned to the top. This goes out every single day. Please do like it if you find that it brings you some value. Let's get into it, starting with the price action. We have Bitcoin down a couple of percent at 42.1, ETH at 2.3K, Solana down 5% at $95, Ape is up a few percent at $1.5, NFT volume is at 14.8 million on ETH, 6.7 for Solana, 8.3 for Bitcoin. And getting into the headlines, number one, Jupiter trades at 5.8 billion FDV. I think it's up now since I wrote that. It's about 6.2 now. But the team was criticized for dumping by creating a pool for buffering airdrops. There's a long explanation from the founder in the snapshot if you'd like to read it. There's also multiple other tweets if you want to keep reading them, but we're going to synthesize it all in just a moment. Number two, Claire Silver raises 500 ETH, that's $1.17 million by selling out digital fashion drop Corpo Real at 500 pieces for 1 ETH each. That is pretty damn impressive. The floor price is now just a little bit under one. I think it's 0.85 or so. Number three, Mockaverse releases teaser video including multiple Web3 IPs, including Imaginary Ones, Farcana, Pixelmon, Championsverse, and Pixels Online. Very interested to see how they are going to have this one token that rules all of these other projects, which also have tokens. Trying to wrap my head around that. Might try to have a discussion on that too today if we have some time. Getting into the floor prices, we've got CryptoPunks at 60 ETH, Bored Apes at 24.4, Mutants at 4.2, DGods at 2.9, Captains at 4.5, Azuki's down 3% at 6.4, Penguins down a couple of percent at 15.7, Moonbirds at 1.1, and the Nouns winning bid was at 8 ETH. One CryptoPunk sold for 655 ETH yesterday as $1.48 million, just a normal one with a purple hat. Either a wash trade or a fat finger, not quite sure. And also a Matt Kane Gazer sold for 10 ETH, that's 22.6K. Legendary, those are the headlines. Those are your thoughts. Any numbers catching your eye? Do you think the CryptoPunk was a wash trade, a fat finger? What's going on there?
I saw it when Beanie posted about it, obviously. I do think it was a fat finger. I don't necessarily think it was a wash trade. But it's certainly not the first. It wouldn't have been the first wash trade. It wouldn't have been the first fat finger. So God knows what happened with that one. In terms of the other numbers, always like the Gazers. You know, it is my favorite art blocks collection. It's obviously also my biggest art blocks bag. This is what makes me particularly happy to see it moving. But I also think it's And I know I keep saying that every time one of the more complex art blocks drops in terms of how many things there are to explore with it. So whenever I see it in the snapshot, I go back to the collection and have a look at some of the gazes and see how the states have changed.
Indeed. Very, very interesting stuff. Okay. First question before we get into the Jupiter thing. Actually, let's do it the other way around. I want to get into the Jupiter thing straight off the bat. TLDR Legendary. What is going on? We had the Jupiter airdrop yesterday. That was clearly yesterday's headline. It traded as high as 6.9 billion FDV, maybe even a little bit higher at one point in time yesterday. It's now kind of dropped down to around the 6 billion FDV region. Obviously, a lot of free money for a lot of people in the Solana ecosystem. Super delighted for them. However, there's been a lot of criticism about the way that Jupiter have provided the liquidity for the token. So quick TLDR, what has happened? Why are people upset? And why do you think what you think about it?
Yeah, let's recap what happened. So
Yes.
Jupiter token launched yesterday. There's a total of 10 billion tokens. The initial split is 50-50 between the community called Vault and the team called Vault. Out of that team multisig, the Jupiter team has taken 10% of the total supply, being 1 billion tokens, and have withdrawn them for liquidity provision into the team hot wallet multisig. And 400 mil out of those tokens have been used in a single-sided JUP launch pool, which they set up via Meteora. The rest of the token are allocated for what they call various liquidity needs over the first year. And this is what has happened in terms of the liquidity provision. This is what happened in terms of the token breakdown. This was publicly known. This was announced on the website in the research document, so everyone could have had a look at this. And
just to be clear on this point, the reason why they needed those tokens for market making is because there's no investors here, right? Like traditionally, there's always like seed investors who need to get paid somehow, or there's market makers who are responsible for creating the liquidity for the token. There's none of those people. Is that correct?
I don't know if they haven't worked with market makers. I assume they would have had worked with market makers, at least for the centralized exchange listings on Binance and the other exchanges. I couldn't think that they would have done that themselves. I don't think that Binance would even let you do such a thing, but that I can't speak to with confidence. However, on the decentralized side of things, if you want to put it like that, they definitely did the liquidity provision themselves. And obviously, as the token launched, some people were selling the airdrops, some people were mass market buying JUP because they wanted to build up a position. And the FUD narrative on the timeline goes like this. So instead of doing a token sale, basically they went quote unquote public like a stock, because this was the token launch, and let people open market buy JUP as kind of a delayed IDO. This is a bit of the criticism that's floating around.
So it's sort of like, instead of buying the JUP from an IDO, like in a pre-sale, you're buying it directly from the team who are providing that liquidity as soon as the market opens.
Yeah. And obviously what happens with that on the other side of things is if you buy, tokens from the team, and the team is reducing the pool size over time because it was just an initial liquidity provision, the team essentially has sold a part of their Jupiter tokens and has made money on that. And some people, or the people on the timeline who are not very much in love with that concept, are criticizing that, hey, this should have been a staking, this should have been unlocked over, God knows, 24 months, 36 months, and whatnot. And they are basically pissed that this didn't happen, and Jupiter was able to take profits on day one, with the thinking being, if Jupiter wasn't able to do that and people are market buying millions and millions of JUP, then the price would have been higher today. Yeah, probably you can tell from my tone, I am not on the side of the FUDers. I do think that this is really a stupid narrative, to put it bluntly, because it was publicly known that this is going to be structured like that. B, it was a goddamn airdrop that everyone made money on, and we're still up from that. People who bought early once the token came out at 40, 47 cents, whatever, are still significantly up on that. And I just don't see the issue with the team taking money on a token that they launched via their own launch pad, which is the way how some people have put it. I just don't see the issue with a team making money with their own product that they've been building diligently over the last years.
Very interesting take. Let's go through this. This kind of synthesizes some of the criticism, and we were going through it just before the show as well. I think it might make it more crystallized for people, because it's not entirely straightforward. So Adam Cochran, who I believe is many people's favorite person on Twitter, said, so he made 4 points. Number one, they gave 50% of the token to themselves. My reaction to that is, okay, like that's fine, right? Like they literally created this whole protocol and gave 50% to the community, and they've kept 50 for themselves. I don't see that as a bad thing. Number two, use their own platform, which also paid itself. Okay, that's okay. So this is not something which is detrimental to the community, right? It doesn't matter which platform they use. That's not causing anyone any harm. Number three, pulled liquidity from the pool in cash. That one I'm not so sure on. Number four, gave a cut to the dev team. So in summary, a $30 million cash out on day one with no lockup, and they still own 50%. This seems to be the issue. The issue seems to be they didn't like announce traditionally in a traditional way, like, look, we are the team. We're going to have a 1 year cliff, which means like, we're not going to receive anything for a year. Then we're going to vest this amount per whatever over 18 months or something. The issue seems to be that they didn't have a cliff. There's no kind of vesting schedule. And it seems like people want them to, and maybe that there was no kind of communication about that. So those two things. So just for clarification, Landry, what do you think about that specific kind of take, especially the take where Adam went on to say shitty antics, throwing away the reputation on what could have been a very successful business long term?
Yeah, if I go through those things point by point and take the time to do that, they gave 50% of the token to themselves. Yes, we have known that, and the other 50% are for the community. They are building almost everything themselves. So who the fuck should they give the tokens to? They're using their own platform, which also pay itself. Even smarter that they're using their own launchpad platform. And with that, also to keep in mind, they did launch the WEN token before that, right, on their own platform and airdrop that to people as a test. And everyone also has made money on that. So if they can build their own platform, like why not launch your own token on that? Pulled liquidity from the pool in cash. This is exactly the point that we've been just talking about. And yes, gave a cut to the dev team, and they cashed out those 30 million that Adam is sharing. If you put that in perspective to, I know that we don't like FTV values, but if you put it in perspective to the FTV, that is what 0.5% of the token's FTV. If you look at what is the volume? 24-hour volume 1.5 bill, market cap 800 mil. So yeah, they cashed out then like, what is it, 3-ish%? That's lower than unlocks that we've seen at TGEs with KOL rounds, pre-seed rounds, and other investors managing to make money on investments that they got in early. So I really don't see Adam's issue with that.
Very fair. Sammy, your hand is raised. Do you agree with Legendary's take, or do you agree with Adam?
It's difficult. I mean, being an ex-auditor, I'm always professionally skeptical. I think the issue for me here would be, like, are those incentives aligned long term? If they're able to cash out day one and still own a decent portion, I guess the only incentive for them to continue building is just the upside for the tokens that they hold, but they can ultimately just sell. I don't know the specifics as to whether they've got other clauses or things in there that restrict them from doing that, but that would be my, on the face of it, would be my biggest concern. But I do tend to agree with Legendary. Like, they have built their own stuff, like all the outflows that you would ordinarily expect to go to these third parties. They've done it themselves, so why not just pay yourself for it? But yeah, I think my biggest concern would just be around, like, I mean, if you have someone else coming in that's not necessarily native to crypto, and they see an anon-cat launch a project, DEX, and they've taken a big cut themselves, I think it would worry a lot of people. But I don't know. I think, yeah, ultimately you're paying yourselves for the work that you've done. It's just, yeah, a little bit skeptical about the long-term incentives.
Look, I think that's actually a really fair point. It's a very fair point about incentives, because we've often spoken about, in particular with NFT projects, right? When you get too much given to you upfront straight away, that tends to be a problem. It doesn't align incentives properly because you get given too much upfront straight away. So I think that's a very, very fair point. What do you think about the point, Sammy, on communication, where ultimately, if they wanted to do that, and should they have been more explicit? So I'm going to share this for the people on YouTube and just read it out here in a second. OSF asked a question underneath one of the many tweets by Meow, and this is maybe another point as we speak towards communication. This guy writes essays over and over again as tweets, and as preparing for the show, I've got like 5 different essays open on what either, you know, trying to clarify what went on with this. And ultimately, if you want to clarify, you need to have one thing that you can point towards that will become the clarification, not 6 different tweets. So that's my kind of first thought. But OSF asked the question, hi, we're Meow. I'm a big fan of JUP and everything you have built, but do you not think a fairer way of funding would have been to explicitly state that you guys planned to sell $250 million worth of tokens ahead of time? So this is a higher value than what we were talking about, Legendary. Sammy, your thoughts first. Do you think it's purely a communication issue? Should that have just been made more explicit in some way?
Yeah, I think there's probably a risk of over communication and just too much text that's kind of obfuscated the actual underlying transaction. I think sometimes less is more. So making it super clear, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I completely agree that making something super clear around upfront sales of tokens or extraction just kind of makes sense. And that would have avoided any FUD, because they would have been able to refer back to that specific point and said, look, hey guys, we've made it clear up front. This is what we intend to do, and this is what we've done.
Fair enough. Makes sense to me. Want to go back to Legendary in a second to start to think about where this money is going to go. Where everyone else thought this money was going to go somewhere. It doesn't look like it's gone anywhere. Everything's red at the moment. So where the hell has this money gone? But want to go to Tiro first. Tiro, welcome to the stage with us again, my friend. Where do you stand on this? Are you on Legendary's side? Are you with Adam? Should they have been more transparent? What's the status of the Jupiter token?
Sure. I kind of think that they want more action within the Jupiter network. Obviously, it's an exchange. So I got a small bag of 200 JUP. I just sold mine. There's going to be multiple other airdrops for JUP as well. I feel like they're just pumping the primer here and kind of getting people used to their website and transacting on it, and hopefully creating some awareness. This is not the FUD. They don't want the FUD, obviously. They should have been more upfront. 100%, let's get out in front of it, be transparent about, hey, we're offering this out to other people at this certain price, and get ahead of it, because now they're kind of backtracking. And like you said, there's multiple essays, and everyone's all over the place, and they can't really come to a succinct answer of what happened, what's going on, and where they're going next. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of a fumbling of the bag communication wise, but at the same time, they're looking for more people to transact on the Jupiter website to transact. So another 4 airdrops or 3 airdrops coming. So
yeah, very, very interesting. Thanks for that. I think the communication thing is exactly correct. Just as another way to try to frame it for people who are trying to understand, this was an interesting tweet that was shared with us earlier today from Hammer. They said, Legendary, want to just confirm if this is the right way to think about it. They said, actually hilarious that none of us realized that Jupiter team put in moon protection on the launch. The opposite of plunge protection. The price can't go up past 70 cents until they rake in $100 million. Kind of unreal, definitely bearish. Is that the correct way of thinking about it, Legendary?
I'm shaking my head at this. Yes, of course you can put it like that, and of course you can be like, oh, let's do the thing that we love to do with gaming tokens, which is make mini initial market caps, make sure that there's almost no circulating supply, and just fucking pump up the FTV number to be like, cool, I just built a $4 billion game over the last 3 weeks with the demo that I had on my website. And they went the other way and just set up a massive pool themselves. And yes, of course, if this pool would have been smaller and in that short amount of time, people wouldn't have put together probably 100 mil to put in a pool, the price would have pumped and more people would have dumped the airdrop if it went over that. So I don't really think that it made too much of a difference, especially as they also have been reducing the pool size, and that was more for the initial launch to have liquidity and to make profits on. And also just to take, I mean, I don't want to go back and forth with this for the rest of the show, but just to quickly, as a final point, take the other side of the point in terms of communication. There still is a website that exactly had one very clearly structured post on how this is going to work with a nice chart with liquidity provision. Like, you don't need to read to the 6 or 7 essays that Meow is posting. You can just reference a website. And if you want to market by 100 mil of JUP, it might be a smart idea to do that. And you could find that info. It wasn't hard to find. This is the final point that I have to share now.
Yeah, to be fair on that, Matthew just shared a good point in the comments. He said, people wonder why IPO filing documents and regulations are so complex. And, this idea of transparency is actually sometimes a mask for laziness. Like, when people call for transparency, I think what they're asking for is like a spoon of information and then to put it directly in your mouth. Like, this is what I'm doing. Do you understand? Are you happy with it? Are you okay? And that's not even how normal markets work. Like, if anything, it's like, you have these huge prospectuses, you need to go through the details and you take the responsibility yourself to understand what you're getting involved in. So the idea that someone should have come out very explicit, like the point of Jupiter is not to explain how liquidity pools work to you. Like, if they had said that they were going to provide this amount of liquidity, this would be the range, this is how it would work, then they don't also need to break down like how much money they will make at a particular point, what their exit strategies or like whatever. Like, that's not their job. So I think as we're having this conversation more, I'm kind of leaning even more towards that direction as well. So it was very interesting to talk about. The final thing on Jupiter that we want to do, because I don't want to go back on the communication and all of that type of stuff, is the question of looking forward now, which I think a lot of people will want to know or want to be thinking about. This is a big stimulus for a lot of market participants. The money doesn't seem, has the money gone anywhere, Legendary? Where is it going to go? If it is going to go somewhere, what are your initial thoughts?
I can tell you what I'm doing with my JUP,
Yes,
which
please.
is obviously not financial advice. Again, love to wear my non-financial advice shirt for those kind of shows. I kind of try to triple dip with it. So what I mean by that is, on the one why are you laughing? On the one hand, I'm on Camino Finance with it in the vaults in liquidity provision. On the other hand, there is boosted pools, the DLMM bonus pools on Meteora, and there's also other pools that have a JUP bonus. So essentially providing liquidity, farming Camino, farming Meteora points, and also probably doing something for the next JUP airdrop by being a liquidity provider.
Very nice. That's kind of fun, providing liquidity. Just as a quick headline for that, is that single-sided liquidity? Is it double-sided? do you literally just take your Jupiter, throw it in,
No,
and then earn
it's not
fees?
you have, that's probably a mistake with the conception of many people with the single-sided pools on Camino. If you go in with a single-sided staking, it still sells off half of your JUP for whatever the counterparty in that pool is, if that's Sol, B-Sol, or whatever. So what I did is I just added some of my own Solana liquidity to that. I didn't sell JUP to go in single-sided and basically sell off half my JUP by doing that.
Okay. I mean, that's one place you could do. So in essence, the money's not going anywhere because you're still holding it, and you're using it to provide liquidity. If there was somewhere else, do you think that's what a lot of market participants will be doing? If it's not that, where else could it be going? I saw on the morning show yesterday, that's exactly what Easy was doing. And I know then they basically spent 20 minutes on the show, teaching people how to do that. So I wonder whether there were a lot of people who wanted to do that. But what do you think? Could NFTs move? Are there particular NFTs that could move? Then would love to hear from Tiro as well. He's got his hand raised. He said he sold. So where did it go? Legendary first.
I do think it will flow into, as always with such big airdrops, into many things. If you look currently, I'm on Camino. Total supply of JUP, for example, on the lending market is currently only at 15 mil. What are we seeing in terms of the JUP liquidity pools? JUP Jito 8 mil, JUP B-Sol at 7, and all the others are like a couple 100K or a couple tens of K. So it's not a lot of money that's going into those other protocols. So question really is what happens with the rest of it. And I think some of it will move into NFTs, some of it will be cashed out, some of it will be used to farm other airdrops. But I don't have any strong inclination as to what NFT they could flow into specifically.
Okay. Unclear where that money's going to go. I think Tiro, give us a concrete answer. Where is your Jupiter gone? You sold it. Where's it gone?
I sold it and swapped it for Sol.
Sol.
Simply, and the markets are mostly red, so I feel like people either moved into USDC as a protection against the winds of the rest of the market kind of bleeding out a little bit, and I think they're waiting to kind of see what's happening. And it was a large influx of money, but no one's really making big moves right now. And I even saw a rumor that you were saying they wouldn't go over a price cap of 70, the team would lose out. Or they can't have the Jupiter price go over 70. And I also saw that they cannot go below 40 as well because they'll lose out on something. I'm not exactly versed on exactly how that works. It has something to do with the liquidity pool or whatever, the way they set it up. But I think a lot of people are just kind of holding in USD or holding in ETH or Sol and just kind of waiting for the market to settle down and start kind of kicking up again before they make a buy. They're just kind of first time they got money in this bull, and they're kind of trying to feel out the market a little bit. Also, I bring up the Quantum Cats. I saw push their mint again to Monday, so I'm very bearish on that. You push a drop twice on ordinals, yeah, no thank you.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in just a moment. But yeah, interesting thought. I do think the market, I think there's macro things going on at the moment that people are getting a little bit concerned about, which might also play a factor. That's why there's a little bit of red across the board as well. Interesting thoughts there, Tiro. Thank you for that. Kusho, put a line under this for us. Where is the Jupiter airdrop going? Welcome to the stage, my friend.
I'm a simple man with very simple needs, not too much stress. I consulted my small team of cultists, all of us thinking about the Jupiter airdrop. And Confusion, Abe, I don't think Abe was part of this, but I and Confusion reached the consensus that while everybody is crying, we'll probably buy up some Jupiter. So while you guys were talking, I was buying up some Jupiter. So it's all good. I didn't get any airdrops, so I just had to buy. So I mean, it's what it is. I can't complain about airdrops since I didn't get any. So instead, I'm just buying.
So two things. It sounds like your small group of consultants is just one of your friends. That's a very, very small group, which I actually think that could be good. That's bullish. Keep the circle small. Keep those who you trust close. But the second thing is, okay, so you're actually a buyer of Jupiter here.
Yeah, I am a buyer of Jupiter. And my consultants are actually 3 consultants, but 2 of them are not currently available. So I had to, make up for it with one of them.
Fair enough. 2 of them are on trial at the moment. They got to step up their consultancy, otherwise they're out. Thank you for that, Kusho. Matthew provided some extra commentary in the comments, which is helpful. US Fed said no to immediate rate cuts. Macro bearish move for the short term. That's what I was alluding to just a moment ago. So feels like we're not getting the rate cuts to pour gasoline on this stuff just yet. So we'll have to see where that goes in just a little bit. That's enough on Jupiter. We're going to get onto the Claire Silver sale and maybe some Mockaverse stuff because it's very interesting what's going on there. But before we do that, let's get to the Web3 news to bring you up to speed with everything else that's been happening in the space in the last 24 hours. As always, this is in the snapshot, which is pinned up top. If it provides some value to you today, please do give it a like. Number one, I love this news. Tether makes more money than Goldman Sachs last quarter. Tether makes $2.85 billion. Goldman makes $2.01 billion. More context from NFT stats. Tether holds nearly $100 billion, which can earn more than 5% risk-free and pay out 0% interest. This stablecoin business is an absolute joke. Like, this is the best business in the whole world. Number two, ETHFi announces 3 million Eigenlayer points to new and existing ETH holders. That's a nice little incentive to restake with them to be giving Eigenlayer points from their own treasury. Number three, as Tiro just mentioned, Quantum Cats delay the mint again to Monday, the 5th of February. Number four, NFT borrower gets wrecked by failing to pay back 98 ETH loan for 180 ETH worth of assets, including CryptoPunk and Bored Apes. That is NFT lending gone wrong. Getting into some more news, Mockaverse launches Shard Rush with potential link to future airdrop. Next, multi-wallet protocol by Fubar launches, where you can have all your addresses under one name. If that works as it seems to be explained, that would be amazing. And finally, Artblocks announces acquisition of secondary marketplace Sansa. That is pretty cool to help them build and establish their vision of a more robust ecosystem to serve creators and collectors. Legendary. That is the rest of the Web3 roundup. Let's get into the Claire Silver news first. In fact, I'll just tell people about the Claire Silver news. I'll show them it, but then I want to talk more about the Mockaverse thing today. Claire Silver raised 500 ETH. That's like a very, very significant amount in one drop. It was 500 ETH, $1.17 million. The collection is now trading at 0.84. If you don't know who Claire Silver is like very, very renowned AI artist, completely anonymous. Is that the correct? Yes, anonymous. And she works with AI. And this is like a collection. How was it described on the website? It was described as an AI collaborative fashion collection exploring our coming reality. I've got this up on screen for the people watching. Legendary, what do you think of this collection? What do you think of Claire Silver?
The collection looks interesting. I don't know about all the intricacies of how the models have been built. From what I was able to gather, it is a multi-year project to get to that point, but I don't know too much about the technical process in the background, to be honest.
The market clearly favors Claire Silver, though, right? Like, this is such a huge sellout at a pretty high price. I think that's probably just the main thing to note. Definitely an artist which is very, very well supported by people in this ecosystem. Legendary, final thought.
Yeah, impressive sellout. Unfortunately, as you said, floor is down 16% from the mint price. So people speculating on probably pulling a rare one is still a thing with art NFTs, which I haven't touched in quite a while, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. I asked you about art the other day, and you were just like, "I'm not doing art anymore." I still like the art. I'm still here for the art. Right, let's get into Mockaverse. Legendary, if you could change the title of the space, please. Mockaverse, again, they released this very interesting video. It's on YouTube for the people watching. Oh, the volume. The key question for me here. So they released this video. It's kind of going through this Mockaverse universe. There's all kinds of different Web3 IPs included in there, like little mentions of them, references to them. And the thing that I thought, and very, very significant IP too, IP like Imaginary Ones, Farcana, Pixelmon, Championsverse, which is by Ubisoft, Pixels. So like a bunch of games and IPs which are doing very well, successful ones in their own right. And they all appear as part of, having real estate in this Mockaverse. And there's this image at one point in the video where there's a Mocka coin going into like this insert to play machine. And my question, Legendary, is how does the Mocka coin govern a 5 or 6 quality IPs which also have their own coin? Like, we had a very interesting conversation with Julio yesterday, who is the CEO of Pixelmon, talking about their specific Mon token, and they've got very ambitious plans for that. Is it possible for, or in what way is it possible for Mockaverse to have this coin that somehow sits on top? So what did you think of this video, and what do you think of that key question?
It is a very relevant question that I unfortunately don't have a good answer to, because I think it's going to be difficult to build like a token layer on top of a token layer. I'm sure that Mockaverse has some very, very great ideas for that. But if you think on how Pixelmon wants to use the Mon protocol, which they themselves also want to open up to other games, probably might being able to use that. And then you have Mocka on top of that, and you might have another game with their own token underneath that. Then you get to a level where there's like 3 layers of different tokens that are based, probably all trading on ETH. So it gets quite complex, which is not me trying to, FUD what Mocka is doing with that. It's just saying it is a very, very complex problem that they are, or not problem, it's a very complex structure that they are building, but I'm sure that they have a couple of ideas how unifying that with their own token layer on top of it could make sense, where that's with the loyalty program that they are building that should work across many, many IPs. And then you collect Mocka tokens and points that you can use as rewards for whatever kind of activations in individual games. That is a way how it could work, but this is probably also the way that I would speculate on how it will work. But I'm certain that they also have other approaches on how they want to build a token layer on top of other IPs.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. I just think it's an interesting question to ask at this point in time. I wonder whether, Sammy, I know you are an ambassador for Mockaverse, so that's kind of useful to have you here now to answer definitively with no reference to confidentiality or anything like that. How can you answer this question for us today, Sammy?
I don't think I can, to be honest. So I do understand like how they're going to integrate it. They've given me some notes. They want me to write something on it fairly soon. So yeah, but I can't openly say, because I need to check with them what's to remain confidential and what's to be revealed. But it will power. Actually, I can't say anymore.
I will speculate, and you can react with emotes. I'm sure that works.
No, that's, I mean, to be fair, we've already said like it's clearly powered by it. The first announcement said it was all powered by Mockaverse. So definitely very interested to hear or to read what you come out with, Sammy, and we'd love to have you back, obviously, to talk about that in more detail when the time is right. But for now, very interesting to see what Mockaverse is doing there. Very significant wins for them, Legendary. Just as a final point, like the caliber of, that was the other thing that kind of stood out to me, the caliber of participants and the caliber of partnerships is high. And it reminded me a little bit of Other Side, where they came out with their video and it had all of these little references to other quality IPs. Felt a little bit like that to me. Do you think it's same level, different level? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely reminded me of that as well.
Very cool. Right. Guys, we are at time for today's show. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Legendary, for co-hosting as always. Thank you, Sammy, Funky, Kusho, Tiro on our stage. And thank you to everyone in the audience. We are very appreciative of you joining us today. We will, of course, be back with you again tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.